Hi everyone, my name is Reginald Escalante, and me and my group will be tackling about generation gap. So let's define first what is generation gap. So what I think of generation gap, it is like the differences of outlook and opinions of between people of different generations. So there are several generations that we will be tackling about. First off is traditionalist, or also known as silent generation. So this generation, people of this generation were born on 1945 and below. So basically, this our grandparents were born on this days, or I mean on this generation. So in terms of technology, I don't think that there are much technology. If there is, super minimal. And yeah, these are like the lolas and lolos of our generation. Next is baby boomers and also Generation X. Baby boomers, they were born on 1946 to 1964, while Generation X born on 1965 to 1976. So, as per study, they say that these are like the parents of millennials, baby boomers, and Generation X. And yeah, in terms of technology, minimal, super minimal. If uh, they have some knowledge about it, but yeah, super minimal. Next up is millennials or Generation Y. They were born on 1977 to 1995. So they're like our ates, like our older ates. You know what I mean? Like our ates would have families already. Yeah. So they belong to that generation. So in terms of technology, some of it, some of them are tech savvy, some of them are not. So 50-50. Now next is Gen Z, iGen, or Centennial. So the people in this generation were born in 1996 up until now. So basically, it's us. This is like the upstart of the uh, evolving of technology. So some of the people, no, most of the people on this generations are tech savvy. You know, when some of the kids that were born in this generations have already, cell phone on their hands instead of like toys. Yeah, because they were born on such a generation that already has a large knowledge about technology. So yeah, so next off we'll be tackling about millennial generations, and that will be tackled about that will be tackled by the next presenter.
Hello everyone. Today I'm going to discuss millennials generation, or also known as selfie. I'm going to discuss millennials generation, or also known as selfie generation. So according po sa binasa ko, explain ko lang po ng konti and gawin ko lang po simple. So yung millennials generation daw po are more on communications, media, and digital technologies po. So, yung panahon po ng 1996 and up until now po, so present, is more on technology na po talaga. Unlike po before sa panahon po ng parents and grandparents natin, hindi po ganun ka-advance yung technology nila. So, only source po nila of information media po is television, radios, and newspapers po. Unlike po sa atin ngayon na using mobile phone po and internet, anything po na nangyayari sa paligid natin, sa bansa po natin or worldwide is madali na po natin siyang malalaman, unlike po before sa panahon ng parents and grandparents natin. Because po yun sa advancement of technologies po. Sinabi din po sa aking binasa na yung millennials generation daw po are seem to be the most educated. Gaya nga po na sinabi ko kanina, it is because po sa advancement of technology po, because of internet and gadgets such as mobile phones, laptops, and computers. Anything po na gusto natin malaman is nasa internet na po. I-search na lang po natin, ganun po sa Google or sa YouTube. Ayun po, matututunan na po natin. Kaya po na consider din po yung millennial gap na most educated po. Kasi po yung dahil nga po sa advancement of technology, mas napapadali po yung pag-aaral namin. Sinabi din po dito na yung millennials daw po are more involved with politics po. Sa panahon po natin ngayon yung mga kabataan po are more vocal na po sila pagdating sa mga suggestions or opinions nila sa mga gusto nilang sabihin about sa politics po. Ayun lang po.
Next is ethical outlook and cultural identity. What is ethical outlook? It is a way of perceiving things in an ethical consideration, while cultural identity are the distinct identities of people or groups in cultural categories. It includes sexuality, religion, ethnicity, social class, region, or any kind of social group. So cultural identity is important for a sense of self and how we relate to other people. Millennials is also labeled as Boomerang Generation or Peter Pan Generation. Gen Y members are very upbeat and more open to change than the older generations. The Boomerang Generation is a generation of young adults who return to live with their parents after a period of living independently. When applied to an individual, a boomerang indicates a person who returns home due to overwhelming or unsustainable costs associated with maintaining a separate household. Basically, it is much easier for them to live with their parents because they can still get support from them and their expenses lessened. It primarily refers to an American phenomenon. Other countries experiencing similar conditions have adopted descriptive terms to identify the children who return or never leave home. They are also labeled as the Peter Pan generation because some young adults refuse to leave their parents' home or they stay with their parents longer than the other generation. In older generations, at the age of 22, it was common for them to be married, own a home, and have kids. While in Generation Y, or the Boomerang generation, most 22 years olds were still financially dependent on their parents or they're still college wrapping up debt. Some researchers told that this generation are the slowest to grow up. 56% of people ages 18 to 35 say that in some situation, choosing to have an abortion is the most responsible decision that a woman can make. So, Gen Ys are more open to changes and more open-minded than their parents when asked about controversial things. So, Generation Y can be confident and ambitious. They are not afraid to question the authority. They are constantly seeking for new challenges and they want a meaningful work. Millennials grew up during the time of transition from conventional methods to modernized and technologically advanced ways of working. Because of this innovation, they may be more imaginative in their thinking. So, for example, um, as said in the statement, they are more open about the idea of a woman having an abortion. Unlike the older generation that think that having an abortion is not a right thing to do.
In addition, some other findings based on research are: first, some millennials identify either as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. In this case, we can notice that when it comes to gender issues, millennials or Gen Y are open to this topic compared to older generations, because this idea was unacceptable in the old days. But if we compare it with Gen Z, of course, Gen Z is more open on this topic. Millennials would say, "I'm proud to be a man," or a woman, though they're already open to this topic or idea. On the other hand, Gen Z would say, "There's no such thing as gender, we're all equal in the eyes of God," and it was proven by the increasing members of LGBTQ. Meaning, in Gen Z, LGBTQ members are increasing and more widely accepted. Second, some millennials say that marriage is old-fashioned and out of date, while most of them disagree. One of the biggest factors why some millennials say that marriage is out of date is because of fear of getting a divorce. I mean, why marry if the divorce rate is high? Past generations, such as baby boomers and Generation X, showed a high rate of divorce. But, despite this, most of the millennials still believe in marriage and lifelong commitment, even though the rate of divorce of past generations affects why the millennials take so long to get married. Because of this, they became more careful or certain about getting married, which is why they have lower divorce rate rather than baby boomers or Generation X. Lastly, millennials belong to four-way split: 25% for pro-life or opposing abortion, 27% for pro-choice or advocating legalized abortion, 27% both for pro-life and pro-choice, and 22% for neither. It just shows that each millennial has their perception or people are different. But if we compare it to the older generation, this is automatically wrong. The idea of abortion is taboo, or the idea of it is not acceptable. But just like what we said earlier, millennials or Gen Y are more open to changes or open-minded than the past generations.
So next guys is yung work ethics. So sa work ethics, ang pinag-uusapan natin dito is ano yung mga behavior or characteristic ng iba't ibang generation sa workplace nila. If meron bang pagkakatulad or magkakaiba ba tayo ng characteristic or behavior? So let's find out.
So we have next is the baby boomers, or otherwise known as the individuals that were born between 1946 and 1964. They also grew up in a post-war era in which they were promised the American dream. In their professional lives, baby boomers are accustomed to working at one company for, in many situations, as long as possible. They also value stability, commitment, and they feel more comfortable in a structured system of hierarchy where you earn a promotion and a raise by dedicating years of employment to an organization. So, baby boomers are extremely hardworking and motivated by position, perks, and prestige. They relish long work weeks and define themselves by their professional accomplishments. Rather than interacting digitally or through social media, baby boomers learn to value face-to-face communication. In contrast to millennials too, most baby boomers don't appreciate constant feedback or overbearing managers. Instead, they prefer to be given a task and left to do it. Since baby boomers equate work and position with self-worth, they are quite competitive in the workplace. They are clever, resourceful, and strive to win. Boomers believe in hierarchical structure and rankism and may have a hard time adjusting to workplace flexibility trends. They believe in FaceTime at the office and may fault younger generation for working remotely. Baby boomers are confident, independent, and self-reliant. This generation grew up in an era of reform and believe they can change the world. They are also not afraid of confrontation and will not hesitate to challenge uh, established practices. With increased education and financial opportunities than previous generations, baby boomers are achievement-oriented, dedicated, and career-focused. They welcome exciting, challenging projects and strive to make a difference. Baby boomers are idealistic because they set their standards high. The fact that this generation grew up in an idealistic 60s only to lag behind their other generations in life satisfaction means many baby boomers have become realists. However, in the workplace, they can then translate into a belief that nothing is gained without hard work and determination. Baby boomers are not as prepared to deal with ethical dilemmas. They are self-centered and have a sense of entitlement, which are bad leadership traits. But they are hardworking and committed to harmony.
So next naman natin is yung Gen X and also yung Millennials. So Gen X are known to be entrepreneurial, flexible, self-reliant, and comfortable with technology. Millennials are tech-savvy, appreciative of diversity, and skilled in multitasking. So, concerning negative traits and workplace attributes, boomers are said to be self-centered with sense of entitlement. And they are also workaholic, self-motivated, and yung mga boomers, they don't appreciate feedback. While yung mga millennials naman is they lack basic literacy fundamentals, and they also have very short attention span. They are not loyal to their organization and they demand immediate feedback and recognition. Integrate technology into the workplace and they expect to have many employers and multiple careers. And when it comes to dress code naman or yung pagsusot nila ng damit, they are more comfortable kung ano yung pipiliin nila kung ano yung mas comfortable sa kanila. So, some study shows na yung mga millennial workers naman is more likely to report unethical behavior in their workplace. So, yung mga example ng mga unethical na to is yung pagkakaroon ng personal business on company time, lying to their employees, abusive behavior, company resources abuse, and falsifying expenses reports, falsifying timesheets or hours work, dinuduga nila. And millennials are the group most likely to report by using the hotline option. So millennials expect close relationship and frequent feedback from the supervisors. They typically associate job satisfaction with the free flow of information and strong connectivity to supervisor and more immediate feedback. Then, sa mga Generation Y naman, yung mga Generation Y members naman can be also characterized by an inclination to a flat corporate culture, an emphasis of work-life balance and social consciousness. They put an emphasis on producing meaningful work, finding a creative outlet, and favoring female over corporate values. Their extensive use of social media has augmented their collaborated skills and created a preference for a team-oriented environment. Then there are also studies that suggest millennials are driving a shift towards the public service sector as more as them consider a career in public service. Some of them shows preference to work for companies and engage in betterment of society.
Let's talk about individualism among millennials. Millennials are habitually painted as the entitled a self-snapping generation. They are the class of self-centered and self-absorbed 20-something. And this is how many critics have come to mind or to define the millennial generation. And some have however defend them by explaining that the millennials have just more time to be themselves. And millennial individualism is qualified as a self-focused time in life. And it does not necessarily mean that they are selfish. It rather means that have a fewer social rules and obligation and more freedom to be self-directed. And they typically have a highly individualistic trait such as being independent and relying on oneself. They are, they take more time to find themselves in their 20s and want to have time to themselves before settling down. And in overall, millennials are said to be more individualistic and materialistic motivated. Compared to other generation, there are seem there seems a decline in millennials' moral values based on the cultural rampant narcissism, and others point to a veritable pandemic of misplaced overconfidence that has turned millennials into a self-esteem generation.
Conflict with parents comes next. I'm convinced most of us can relate to this subtopic, and I've attached some slides to assist you in retaining it. Millennials are generally the children of baby boomers and older Gen X. This is now a common observation that millennials are often in conflict with baby boomers. For one thing, millennials are seen by baby boomers as somewhat greedy, self-absorbed, and wasteful. One of the claimed causes of the disagreement is a difference in mindset. The boomer life principle is as follows: get a great education, get a well paying full time job, locate a stable relationship, buy a house and a car, and have a kid or children if possible. Failing any level of this course, according to baby boomers, is a reflection of one's dignity and demonstrates a lack of moral fiber. As previously said, millennials are viewed as postponing various rites of passage into adulthood and staying with their parents for extended periods of time. As a result, they are accused for failing to live up to the standards of baby boomers, particularly their respective parents. Millennials are perceived to be rejecting the parents' lives. Some assumptions about baby boomers and millennials are more anchored in reality. The Pew Research Center conducted the public opinion polls and demographic data that illustrate part of the generation gap. Millennials are more progressive on social issues, hesitant to identify themselves with political party, are less wealthy, are reluctant to get married. They live at home than their parents did at the same age. Concerning the last point, it may be regarded as a sign of generation gap, which is by the way natural. But it does not imply a mere battle between the generations concerned, and this is because it is difficult to wage a war when you live under the same roof.
In secularism, secular has different meanings, but when I describe my own position as a secular, I'm referring to a view encompassing two broad principles. Firstly, the separation of religion from state leaves religious people free to practice their religion provided. And also, they don't infringe the freedoms of others and allows the non-religious to live without the imposition of religion through law, education, government, employment, or health. This promotes freedom of religion from religion. Secondly, the principle of equality before law seeks to remove all privilege or penalty for having or lacking religious faith, to ensure that no belief, religious or otherwise, receives special protection. Boundaries naturally upset those whose nature is to impose and people who've got used to privilege. They don't like it being removed. Their complaints are to be taken for granted when Saida Warsi told the Vatican that aggressive secularism is being imposed by stealth, likening to the totalitarianism, and saying secularism denied people the right to religious identity, disposition misinterpretation. While secularism denies no one religious identity, it defends that the freedom but not the freedom to impose that identity on others. What secularism says is that having a religious identity does not justify special tax exemption, especially for the already rich, preaching religion in state schools, inserting narrow religious values into common law, having unelected religious leaders as legislators, or demanding council prayers. Redressing this unjust and inappropriate privilege is not totalitarian, nor is it an attack on faith. It's a recognition of the freedom of all people to live without divisive inequalities. It has a secular principle supported by theists and atheists alike, encourage fairness and mutual consideration, and help us all within reasonable limits to live together in the way we choose. So, what is humanism? Well, it is a philosophical stance which affirms the fact that humans have dignity and worth, and that they are capable of discovering truths about the world and humanity's place within it purely by appealing to reason and scientific method in humanism. There is also the emphasis of faith in humanity and a concern for building a more humane and just society. The humanists are usually non-religious. People who believe that the universe is just a natural phenomenon with no supernatural aspect. Hence, the humanists view the world from the vantage point of reason and scientific method. This is naturalistic and scientific view of the world has deep implication and how the human view the human person on the one hand. The humanists see the human person as not distinct from the rest of the nature of humanists. The human person is nothing but a purely worldly creature whose existence is a product of purposeless natural process over a long period of change and development. For this reason, on the other hand, because of the human person is not distinct from the nature, and that their existence is a product of purposely natural processes, the humanists reject the idea of meaningful life for the humanists. Therefore, the idea of a meaningful life as part of divine plan is inconceivable. The purpose or meaning in life is the one created by humans themselves. This explains why in humanism, people make their own purpose in life, set their own goals, and give meaning to their own life.